Thank you, Bill, and thank you all for being here. It's a pleasure to be here with my friend Terry Shook, who's going to work with you on some of these planning efforts, and certainly with John Robert Smith, who's a true national leader in transportation and particularly in rail development, and we look forward to hearing from him. We've been at this at the Department of Transportation in North Carolina for about almost 20 years. Actually started under Governor Martin and continued under our other recent governors, Governor Hunt and Easley, and now Governor Perdue, building this spine really for rail development across the Piedmont of North Carolina from Charlotte to Raleigh, and working with communities like yours to develop the passenger rail system, but also supporting the freight operations that operate on the same track. And so we've invested state dollars, and now we're investing more federal dollars in that corridor, and we believe it will help us improve the economy along that corridor. It will help us improve the communities along that corridor, and we think there's been some success. We look forward to working with Lexington on this exciting project. We will be a partner, and a good partner, we hope. If we're not being a good partner, let me know, because our goal is to support what you want to do and to make it a good partnership. We will connect Lexington into this passenger rail network that eventually, we hope, will lead from Charlotte all the way to Washington, D.C., and then down further south to Atlanta with higher speed trains. We're not talking about 200-mile-an-hour trains. We're talking about building on the system we have now, getting those average speeds up and the reliability up so that we can have good service that people can use, that's economically good, and that supports the kind of community development that you want to have here in Lexington. Again, we think we've had some success in other communities along the way. We still have a lot of work to do. We will look forward to having the opportunity to partner with you on this great effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Gene. The Lexington Redevelopment Commission and the city feel that we have a way to move the city forward after experiencing the loss of our furniture and textile manufacturing plants. Something that is tried and true and has been successful in other small cities, and we want to introduce you to that today. We do have a way forward that I know you will be excited about as we are. We want to present to you the opportunity to hear from someone who can attest to the value of a multimodal station and transit-oriented development. Not only can our speaker personally attest to the benefits of the city and its citizens, but also can point to other small towns and cities where TOD has been most beneficial. John Robert Smith is that person. He was a 4-term mayor of Meridian, Mississippi, a longtime leader on behalf of passenger rail. He is co-chairman of Transportation America, a former chairman of Amtrak's board, a former member of the transportation committees of the National League of Cities and the U.S. Conference of Mayors, as well as former co-chairman of the National Forum on the Future of Passenger Rail. He is a veteran of station-centered community development and led the drive to renovate the City of Meridian's Union Station, a $7 million historic restoration project that created a new multimodal transportation center, dramatically increased use of the station, raised property values and city tax receipts, and lowered crime in the station's neighborhood. He served on Reconnecting's board for 5 years and was a founding partner and board member of Reconnecting America's predecessor organization, the Great American Station Foundation. He is now the president and CEO of Reconnecting America. Please join me in welcoming John Robert Smith to Lexington.
Good evening. I want to tell you what a pleasure it's been for me to be with you in Lexington today, and the wonderful hospitality I've received while I've been in your hometown. And I want to salute and acknowledge Secretary Conte and the North Carolina Department of Transportation, for they literally lead the South in visionary thinking about transportation and how to connect the people they serve and the communities in which those people live. Truly, they are known throughout the nation for innovative ways to address those transportation needs, and I certainly want to acknowledge that great leadership. And as you said, it's been a continuing effort for several decades now, and it's paying off for your state. But tonight we want to talk about your hometown of Lexington. I will share stories with you that I have experienced and experienced personally, but you're beginning to take a step into creating a new future for your hometown, playing to the best of your strengths, but bringing also the best hope for the next 2 generations to come at least. But it's your destiny, and you can either seize that destiny or you can walk away from it. I am the president of Reconnecting America. I've been in Washington now for 2 years. And Reconnecting America is a national not-for-profit dedicated to how we connect transit, transportation, affordable housing, and rebuilding communities across this country. I am also the managing partner for the Center for Transit-Oriented Development, which is the only national not-for-profit that is dedicated strictly to the research, best practices, and implementation of good transit-oriented development. And I'll explain that term in just a few minutes. I'm also co-chair, as was mentioned, of Transportation for America. It's a national coalition of 500 partner organizations that have come together to see that the next transportation authorization bill that allows the Secretary to do these wonderful things in his state, to see that that authorization bill is as visionary as Congress can pass at this time. And the good news is that while Congress has seemed to be perhaps dysfunctional, but surely not proceeding at any rapid pace on authorizations or action to put this country back to work, that the transportation authorization bill is one that they're actually going to be able to pass. And it looks like it'll be a bipartisan bill, and that should be celebrated. We tend to think of transportation issues in terms of metropolitan areas. Well, those are big city issues. But we know that's not true. This map shows the micropolitan city clusters across this country. Overlaid on those green micropolitan areas, you see Amtrak's conventional rail service in blue, and then the high-speed federally designated corridors in red. And again, as Gene said, we don't have to do 200 miles an hour. We have to beat the automobile. And we have to be reliable and dependable and have the necessary frequencies. And as you look at that map, there's Lexington, right in the midst of 2 corridors that come together, the Northeast Corridor, the Southeast Corridor, and the Gulf Coast High-Speed Rail Corridor. And in a geographic center as you look at the Atlantic coast of the United States. Warren Buffett, who's not in the habit of losing money, purchased controlling interest in the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad. He did that because he believes not only in the importance of freight rail for this country and its productivity, but also passenger rail in this country. And when I was on the Amtrak Board of Directors, the BNSF was one of the best freight railroads we had to work with. So those who may say that investing in rail is not a wise investment, well, I think Mr. Buffett would disagree with that statement. You know, when I went to Washington from Meridian, and I grew up and lived my entire life in the same house in Meridian. It was the house my grandfather built, who was an engineer for the Mobile and Ohio Railroad. My 5-year-old grandson, Ethan, is the 5th generation of our family to grow up in that house. So deep roots. I know small towns and cities in rural America. And when I got to Washington, I found out they don't understand that inside the Washington Beltway. They believe that cities are defined strictly by population, and that a large city and a small town have absolutely nothing in common, face totally different challenges with totally different solutions. They also believe that a rural population is, and they would certainly consider Meridian and Lexington a rural population, that we're self-sufficient. They honestly believe we live on farms and ranches and are totally self-sufficient and don't need city services. They also believe that because of that self-sufficiency, we don't need transportation choices. As long as we have our pickup truck with our gun rack, we're fine. Well, the truth of the matter is, because we live in small towns, is we know that big cities and small towns, and I can tell you this from the U.S. Conference of Mayors, the mayor of Los Angeles and the mayor of Meridian can sit down and discuss the same issues. Different order of magnitude, I grant you that, but some of the same solutions for those issues, because a city is not defined by population number. Above 50,000 doesn't make you a city, and below 50,000 doesn't mean you're not a city. A city is defined by the services that you provide to the surrounding area. That makes you a city. And no matter where our people live, they need to be connected by transportation choices. How do you get to your job? How do you get to the doctor for health care? How do you get to the community college for an education? And those transportation options must be provided for everyone. Even in this bright light, I can see that some of you have hair like mine that is becoming laced with silver, if not snow white. We represent the largest generation ever to live in this country, the baby boom generation. It is also, thank the Lord, predicted to be the generation with the longest lifespan. So what does that tell you? We've got to provide for a healthy, aging population that's going to want to be connected to their families, going to want to continue their education, going to want to be involved, but you don't want us driving on the interstate in 15 or 20 years. So we must have other options, and our disabled veterans and our young people all need to be connected, and will demand those choices in the future. And I'm glad to see that at least North Carolina is preparing for that. Small towns and rural areas do have some unique needs, though. The distance we travel between destinations is usually a longer distance. Again, as I said, we have to have those transportation improvements that connect us to the very things in life we must have. And when you think about it, transit doesn't mean that it's an underground metro, your city bus, your city transit van, or a handicapped accessible van. That's all transit. And those things can make a tremendous difference if they come together in one point in your city center. Now, transit-oriented development, that's really very simple in that it's a mixture of the housing and the retail and the commercial, all those amenities coming together in a place that is walkable, where you're not totally automobile dependent. And as you look at this city, or the city of Meridian, it has a nice grid system of relatively small block sizes. So it has the potential to have people actually living in your downtown, where they work, where they play, where they spend their money. And as you think about transit-oriented development, and that's what you're going to be doing with this station, think in terms of the jigsaw puzzle of people that need to be at the table to knit this thing together. And it's going to make a stronger project, and it's going to make one that you as a community will be so very, very proud of. The partnerships you need, and we'll touch on those as we did for Meridian, need to be in place early, and your table has to be very, very big. It can't be just the city, just the county. This is your structure that they're talking about building. You have to have local champions, and sometimes you have to grow your own hero. But there always has to be someone out there who simply will never stop, will never let it go, regardless of the price they personally pay. And when you have a plan, implement it. Don't wait for the plan to be perfect. Don't build a flabby consensus. Don't wait till everyone is satisfied or you'll never build it. Have a plan, execute it. Well, I want to talk about my hometown of Meridian, Mississippi. Before I moved to Washington, I'm a pharmacist by profession. I was in the city council for 4 years and served as mayor. And in Meridian, we have a strong mayor form of government. It's a full-time position. Served there 16 years. My children came to me. I was a single parent. And so they were with me from the time they were 5 and 7 on and still there in Meridian. They came to me and said they had not asked me not to seek a 5th term. They had had quite enough of the public's engagement in their personal lives. So I understood that. But Meridian built the first multimodal transportation center in the South. We've had this facility open now about 15 years. A multimodal center is where you bring your, for us, Amtrak service, Trailways Greyhound, city transit service, taxi service, airport, transport connection, all together in one place, because the synergy of people that move in and out of that facility create economic opportunity for your downtown. It's economic development for me, and you're starting in a much better place than Meridian did. Well, let me tell you about my hometown. Meridian is a city of 40,000 people located on the Mississippi-Alabama border. When I was mayor, our population was 62% African American. We are only 40,000, but we're the retail, medical, employment, entertainment, educational trade draw for 350,000 people that live in 11 rural counties that surround us in Mississippi and Alabama. We're blessed to be on 2 interstate highways, 20 and 59, that connect you from Atlanta to New Orleans or to Dallas. We have the longest runway in 2 states, so we can land anything there, and we have relatively good air service for a city of our size from Meridian to Atlanta Hartsfield. As I told the luncheon group, anything that flies through the air from Meridian, leaving Meridian, must go to Atlanta Hartsfield first. I'm quite confident that when my breath leaves this body, my spirit first goes to Atlanta Hartsfield before it will then go to its final destination. We're also on the Amtrak Crescent Line, which I like to think originates in Meridian and heads north to New York, or originates in Meridian and heads south to New Orleans. But that tells you where Meridian is, and location is very important, but it doesn't tell you why Meridian is. Who were we? What was special about the place where we are in geography that caused a city to develop there? And I think as you talk about Lexington, you have to first understand why you emerged as a city. But you also have to be honest with yourself. Who are you now? And this is what the depot area looked like when I was elected to the city council and to mayor. It's not a very pretty image, is it? Pretty well tells you we've turned our back on our visitors that come by rail or by bus. It says we've turned our back on a large part of our downtown, and truly we had. But that's who we were. And then you must ask yourself the most important question: who do you aspire to be? Well, this is the station, Union Station, that was built in 1907 by the Southern Railroad Company, a mission-style architecture in Meridian. That building certainly says something about who those people thought they were at that time. But it tells you also who they aspired to be for the next 100 years. And I hope our station sends the same message to my grandson. You have to have a vision to inspire our community. And as you begin this design process, there will be visual images that you will be shown, because most of us are incapable of seeing something that is not there. So as you go through this process, you will see the ideas take form and take shape, and there will be sessions where you'll be invited to comment, be a part of creating that design, that vision for your community. Meridian had lost its sense of self. I believe that a city has a personality just like a human being does. And that personality can believe that they have a future, that it is bright ahead for them, or it can be a defeatist personality. And you can have a low self-esteem. Well, that's what Meridian had. We had lost the textile industry there in Meridian. The railroad had at one time virtually moved out. The downtown was deserted. Young people at graduation would tell me, "Mayor, I can't wait to get out of Meridian." I'm pleased that the last graduation I went to, I was beginning to hear, "I can't wait to graduate and come home to Meridian." But we had lost our way. We had no self-confidence. The last one leaving Meridian, turn out the lights. We had never done anything in creative financing, didn't take care of our infrastructure, abandoned it to crumble. We certainly did not have partnerships between city and county or city and state. And we had no design creativity. We built very disposable buildings to show that we were good stewards of the public purse. And of course, what that meant was we had buildings that were knocked down in 20 years because they said nothing about who we were or who we wanted to be. And if you have that can't-do mentality, it will seize your whole community. Well, you have to have partners when you go about any undertaking, and certainly the Mississippi Department of Transportation had to be a partner there. They had enhancements, monies from the authorization bill of that day. They didn't have anything to spend it on. So I went to see them, and I told them I could relieve them of that burden so that they wouldn't have to send that money back to Washington. Because you know, when you deny federal money and send it back, they don't send you a check for your part of it back. They send it to somebody else. So if you don't want it, we'll take it in Mississippi or in Maine or in Montana. But Mississippi Department of Transportation was a partner. Our federal delegation was a partner. During the midst of our project, Amtrak cut service from 7 days a week to 3 days a week south of Atlanta. Well, that's one of my big modes of transportation I'm losing. I can't have that. So I organized the mayors from New Orleans to Atlanta, and we went to Washington to see what we could do about it. I went into the office of Trent Lott, who is minority leader, a senator from my state, and I said, "Trent, the Yankees are after our trains again." I mean, he understands what that means, so he became engaged in that and became a real champion, to his credit, for passenger rail in this country. We knew we needed the intercity bus service, of course, the transit service, the Amtrak service all coming together, but we were unaware at the time of the impact it could have on housing, especially public housing, on the return of the downtown and its historic properties, and on the wonderful entertainment venues that I'll show you that developed. We put the money together. Basically, it's almost a $7 million project. The city had $1.3 million in it. The rest was some federal money, some prepaid leases. We put together everything we could find until we had the money ready to go forward. And you're seeing pictures from the structure itself through its construction. Eye to detail is important. And I want to remind you, you've got to build it right. You've got to invest in the quality of the property. If you build it cheap, your results will be cheap. You've got to say, this is your front door. This says something about who we are, and you've got to make it a quality structure. You see the back there of Union Station, and you see the Norfolk Southern and Kansas City Southern business trains parked there in the evening. If you'll notice that veranda on the back, it's a wonderful public meeting space as well. Design is important. It's the most heavily used public space in Meridian right now. Meeting rooms on the upper floors. Our chamber is located there. 250 events in this facility, everything from weddings to anniversaries to class reunions to concerts, and it draws 300 people a year through this facility. Now keep in mind, I'm talking about a city of 40,000 people, and when you bring 300,000 additional people into your downtown core every year, the synergy of those people is economic development. They buy dinner while they're there. They go to the theater. They shop while they're there. Property values have quadrupled in downtown Meridian. Sales tax revenue, not only from this project, but others, have gone up 62%. This is return on the people's investment. If you have a viable city core, which you do, your downtown is in much better shape than ours was when we started as far as viable businesses. You better save it. Existing transportation hub, which you have a small one, grow it, make it something special, save those wonderful historic structures that you have, and house your people in a place that you would be proud to live. What really surprised us, though, was the economic return. The city put $1.3 million in this facility, and it has leveraged to date $135 million of additional public-private sector investment within 3 to 4 blocks of this facility. That's 100-to-1 return for the city investments. Pretty good deal. Here you see the Terminal Hotel. And Secretary Conte, I know you know Gil Carmichael from Meridian, former Federal Railroad administrator. This is Gil's building. Terminal Hotel, its offices now. In the downstairs corner of that building is a rather unfortunately named Terminal Cafe. But as you see, the other developments in the downtown, local businesses have found their niche, little upscale businesses. The building on your far right is the Rosenbaum building, retail on the first floor, 8 condominiums selling at $250,000 apiece on the second floor, 4 on the top floor, condominiums selling for $500,000 apiece, unfinished space. All of it's been purchased and is a thriving business there, mixed-use development, and that's in my hometown. Remarkable change. The success of that station spilled over into other successes. This is City Hall, a 1917 Beaux-Arts structure Archives and History is calling the single most important historic restoration in Mississippi of this decade. New Central Fire Station there, but again, eye to detail and to design. And then probably the crown jewel is the Riley Center for Performing Arts. It's a conference center for Mississippi State University, housed in this 1891 department store, but next to it is the 1890 Grand Opera House. This opera house was designed by the firm that designed the original Metropolitan Grand Opera House in New York, which has been demolished, and the National Theater in Washington. My first 3 weeks in office, the business community, the elite of the business community, came to see me and said, "Mayor, first thing you need to do is demolish that opera house, which had been closed for 40 years. We're tired of talking about it. We need surface parking." And I said, "Well, I'm not your guy." But they would have demolished this structure. Double horseshoe balconies, lovingly carried back to its original paint finishes, original wall coverings, carpets, seats about 1,000 people, lovely side boxes. On an evening's performance, you might see Wynton Marsalis and the Kennedy Center Orchestra performing there. Or you may go see Hal Holbrook perform Mark Twain Tonight, or the Soweto Gospel Choir, or the Queen's Own Savoyards from London who came to perform the Mikado and brought their own orchestra with them. But it's a magical space, and think of what has happened in the evening when you bring that kind of energy into a city of 40,000, drawing people from all over the region to come hear the performance, but to absorb that beautiful space. And we return arts education to the public schools of Lauderdale County. The exterior of the Opera House at night. You've got to think about where your people live in and around your downtown, and this is what public housing looked like in Meridian, Mississippi. High crime rate. I wouldn't want to live there. Drug problems. So we demolished those and we built this. It was the last Hope 6 project built in this country. Notice the sidewalks, the historic lighting, the preservation of the trees, the landscaping. When I was there, if you were the working poor, I could put you in a 3-bedroom, 2.5-bath home for $70,000. We'd take you to the bank because going to the bank is an intimidating process, and we'd take you through the loan application process. Then we would give you a $10,000 down payment assistance loan. We'd forgive it at $2,000 a year for 5 years if you worked and volunteered in a not-for-profit there in Meridian. So now you're at the end of 5 years, you've got a home for that you've put $60,000 in, and you're the first person in any memory of your family that's ever owned a home. And let me tell you what living in a public housing and some rent-to-own housing like this does for the people who live there. The people who lived in these homes would tell you they stay at such and such a project. I'll take you down that sidewalk and the citizens will come out and greet you and they'll say, "Oh, I live at 916 26th Avenue." And the difference between staying and living is ownership. It's ownership in the future of that neighborhood and the future of that community, because now you are invested. But it all has to be connected by transportation. That gets back to the transit part of it. Whether it's city vans, buses, or the city trolley, it connects people to where they live, to where they work, to where they go to the junior college to get an education, to how the elderly get to health care. Now, as you think about your community, I want you to think, if you're an elected official, think beyond your 4 years in office. Because what you're crafting for your community will last far beyond any one person's term. In fact, if you do it right, it's going to last beyond your lifetime. You have to vision 20, 30, 50 years out. And that's hard to focus on a time when we may not be in this world. But for me, I find that point of focus reflected in the eyes of my 5-year-old grandson, Ethan. I have every reason to believe that Ethan will be in Meridian, Mississippi long past the time that I will be there. But the decisions we make today in that hometown will either allow him to find a vibrant life and bring the 6th generation up in that home, or yet he'll see opportunity diminish and he'll have to leave and move elsewhere. I think the notion of city building, of the vision one has to have of preparing your work for the next generation and the generation after that, is best captured in the words of the poet Vachel Lindsay, writing about his hometown of Springfield, Illinois. Record it for the grandson of your son. A city is not built in a day. Our little town cannot complete her soul till countless generations pass away. We must have Lincoln-hearted men, for a city is not built in a day, and they must come and go and do their work while countless generations pass away. I urge you, as you craft your vision, as you embrace your destiny for the little town of Lexington, be bold with your vision and Lincoln-hearted in your aspiration and your determination. Build a future for the grandson of your son. Thank you.